All right, 1:01 p.m. Let's go ahead and get started. There'll be a few people still finishing up lunch, I'm sure, and coming in, but just want to thank everyone for being with me today. My name is Chris Minjuring with DWD Technology Group. If you're a client of ours, more than likely we've spoken at some point or another. If you're not, then hopefully we look forward to meeting and working with you. Myself, I've been doing Sage 100 for 14, 13 years, I don't know, many years. I've progressed from the lowest levels, knowing nothing, up to now working at the highest levels with some very large clients. So a lot of experience with the product and integrations and many different things over the years. And today, we're going to talk about what's new with Sage 100 24, 23, and 2022. Some people have asked in the past, why do we go back to 2022, et cetera. We always tell people to upgrade every couple of years, right? So every 2-3 years, do an upgrade. And so this covers that. This is also the years that Sage also supports officially, is the current year -2. So this kind of gives you that, hey, I'm on Sage 100 2021. If I upgrade to 2024, what all am I going to see that could change? And so today, we'll spend the next hour and a half or so going through all of that, right? Now, part of that is there is a question box on the right-hand side in the Go to Webinar panel. I would encourage you to put questions in that. Sherry from our office is monitoring that, and I will check in with her from time to time. Questions that we may have to take offline, we will, and get back with you. Or if we have time and there are questions I can address as we go through or at the end, I absolutely will. So again, if you go to that GoToWebinar panel, you click on that little arrow to expand it out, you should see a question section and you can enter that there. If you would like CPE credit for all of those people that are smarter than me, then you can reach out to Leah Peters, lpeters@dwdtechgroup.com, and she will get you that information after today's presentation. All right, so what's our agenda today? Well, first, welcome. Hello. What's the top new features? As I mentioned, 2022, 23, and 24. And during this conversation, I'm sure I'll get on my soapbox and talk about other things. I typically do. Let's get started. First, I think it's important to know from the Sage 100 side, who are the individuals that you work with at DWD. Again, if you're a client, you will definitely recognize some of these people. Everybody brings a different skill set to the team. We have a couple that are CPAs. So if you look at like Mary Hildinger, Brad Prather, they're both CPAs. So obviously they do a lot of focusing on accounting needs that people have that come up and how to perform the functions or different training around that. You've got David and Rick. So again, if you're a client of ours, you've probably worked with one of them at some point. They both really focus around the manufacturing side of things. Rick being a previous cost accountant, assistant controller in manufacturing, and David Overholt being, as we jokingly call, the founder of Sage 100 and being a master developer, wrote it all, is what we often joke about. But David has been around this product for 30 plus years, so just a wealth of knowledge. We've got a couple younger, Michael Raw, Christopher Busek, so they focus on report writing, integrations, really helping with everything that is not accounting related with Sage 100. Steve Burks, new to our team in the last year and a half or so. He's come in, he's also a master developer with Sage 100, much like David is. So he's really helped a lot of our clients when they need to maybe do things a little different than Sage 100 does it, and they can work on adjusting the code base and making Sage 100 do some new or different function. And then Con Scambos, the account manager, often if you reach out and you say, hey, I'm looking at, say, Sage Inventory Advisor, because I want to look at a tool that can analyze my inventory, and you may then interact with Cons during that process as he schedules with you and gets their team to do a demo. When you come on board, Usually, if you're a new client or whatever, Cons is involved in that conversation and really helps you bring you into our group. I mentioned the years with DWD, so you can see that listed here. A lot of last couple of years, Christopher Busek and Stephen Burks have been added to DWD. Again, that's growth of our clients, and we actually expect to add another 1 or 2 individuals over this next year to the group, so that we can keep sharing the knowledge of the Davids, the Marys, the Brads, and all that for the next generation of Sage 100 consultants. DWD as a group, we're a division of Doolin, Ward & Dewald, which is an accounting firm. We've got different locations in Indiana specifically, and around 60, 50 accountants on the accounting side. The technology group, 28 of us over there. We focus in the software business consulting, specifically around manufacturing distribution when it comes to Sage 100. We are recognized as one of the top Sage 100 VARs in a couple of different publications, Accounting Today, Bob Scott's, etc. What does DWD work with when it comes to Sage, right? So Sage 100, what we're talking about today, very active, a significant part of our business. We're a Sage developer partner, so again, that's the Davids, the Steves, myself, Michael, right? Integrations, things like that. Sage Fixed Assets, so that's like Mary and Brad, right? It's a tool that not everyone realizes the value of, but if you get a calculator out there and look at your assets and look at the depreciation and how you can save money, with taxation, etc., often that tool pays for itself. And then Sage Intacct, which is Sage's cloud accounting system. It is really big in the not-for-profit, multi-entity space. It's something that if you're doing AR, AP, GL alone, it is an amazing tool. A lot of features that just make all of those activities that you're performing inside of that very, very efficient. There is, in the future, manufacturing distribution is coming into that. We have a solution that's out there that is growing in its capabilities, and we really think that we will look at putting that out into the market hopefully later this next year. So look for information around that as well. What does DWD do overall, right? So software services, right? We do the full implementation of ERP, so training, support, setup, upgrades, customizations, as I've mentioned, be it integrations or, changes to how Sage 100 flows or many different things like that. Report writing, be it Crystal, be it Sage Intelligence, be it setting up data for you to have a Power BI expert, right? Power BI dashboards, right? Many different things we've seen in that financial report writing space. Data conversion. So, if someone buys another company and we need to help them pull information out of QuickBooks and load it into Sage 100, right? Mentioned system integrations. Barcode systems really falls under that. Warehouse automation. A lot of you that work with us know that, there's 2 products in the market, ScanForce, out there that integrate with Sage 100 and have for a long time. Additional, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mentioned Power BI, the scanning side of it, and then integrations. We also do work with Sage CRM, which is their bolt-on CRM product for Sage 100. On a side note, we also provide network services. So if you need an MSP to help you manage security, data backup, hey, my printer broke, different things like that, we have a team of individuals that is what they do day in and day out when it comes to managing that network, setting it up, expanding it, right? I've got a warehouse, I need to put Wi-Fi all the way through it, or my Wi-Fi points are, old, they need replaced, they're not working right, etc. We have a whole team dedicated to that, especially in the Midwest, operating day in and day out. something to make everyone aware, because this is a very popular thing, is the Sage 100 year-end tips. Miss Mary Hildinger will be providing that on December 17th from 1 to 3. I highly recommend you attend that. If you're part of doing the year-end process, you can find that link on our website, and it's also often it's in every one of our consultants' emails in their signature. So you can find it there as well to sign up for that. It's a great tool to help you remember what to do at a year-end. So let's just get started with what's new in Sage 100. Where I start first with this, though, is Sage has a thing called the idea site. So if you go out there and you Google Sage 100 ideas, one of the sites that comes up is the idea site. Looks like this, right? So one of the things is you can look through here and see the different things they have planned, completed, what are hot topics, what's the latest topics, etc., right? And you can set up an account and you can come and vote for ideas. So for example, inactive items are ignored in all manufacturing modules. This was one that was posted to warn people, hey, if I inactivate an item, you've got it in a bill of material, or you go to add it to a bill of material, it should probably pop up a warning and tell you, right? Actually, this one was put in by David in our group. And typically, if we create one in our group, then we tell everybody in our group to go vote for it. Obviously, I'm going to go encourage all of you to go join this site and vote for this idea, because these are changes that we would like Sage to make, right? And so if you kind of come over the completed area, right, there's a lot of things it talks about that, they have completed that came from this, right? So Sage does really watch this idea site. Typically, if you look in the What's New documentation, most of the things you're seeing are related to the idea site, and then a group called 90 Minds, which DWD is part of. So we meet once a year. Sage comes and meets with us, and then we throw out things that we would like them to work on or ideas we have. And obviously, Sage takes that back and judges, and says, hey, this is what we want to do in the next version, etc. So I do encourage you to go to that website and let your voice be heard, as they say, and vote for David's idea. Okay, so 2022, what did they add? Well, one of the things they added was a public favorites, right? So why is this useful? I can set up a public favorites, and I could name it for my sales order processing team, and I could put every single step that they do, right, into that public favorites folder in that sales order section. And if somebody joined my team, that's what they do. I could literally say, hey, there's everything you need in that. I could set that up universally for everyone. Before 2022, this was an individual thing. You could set up favorites, but they were for individuals. So it was a nice feature add that actually they've extended even a little bit further in the newer versions. Exclude inactive items from lookup. So in company maintenance, you could go through and check mark under preferences for a company. I don't want to show inactive vendors and lookups. I don't want to show my inactive customers items, right? Now, much to David's idea, right? It doesn't mean I couldn't still type them in. It just means that they didn't show in the lookups. And so the idea is that if they were to type them in, you could still put up a message saying, hey, this is an inactive item, right? So again, building on that idea. But this was it's very popular, and I highly recommend people use it. There are definitely clients that I work with that I get in there, and I'm like trying to fill out a test sales order, and I pull up a list of items, and there's 20,000 items, and I click on one, it's like inactive, click on another one, inactive. And I'm like, okay, like someone go check that box so like we don't have all those inactive items listed, right? So highly recommend looking at that if you're on 22 or newer. Consider using that option. Now, obviously, if it's on a maintenance, you can see I've got a little screenshot, inactive item checkbox. Same with customers. Your additional tab, there's a box that says inactive customer, right, that you can do, etc. Save date reports. Save dates on selections of reports. So as long as the report, right? When you go to preview it and you put a date in, it can retain that, right? And you'll know, and this is why we put this on here, it came from the idea site, right? So this is one that a customer, right, of Sage 100, said, hey, this would be a really nice feature to add. They added it. Item image upload. So here's an area where you can, on an item, right, do a lookup and find a picture of an item, and it will upload it into Sage 100. It has a folder on the hard drive. It takes the image, moves it over there, right, and it allows these certain types of images. Okay, can be very useful if you need to organize that information. I've seen people use it for websites, right? I think if you use website pipeline and you do that, I think that may actually then let you, or SimCloud, I think it may actually then potentially take the image and allow you, upload it to the website, etc. So they added the ability to upload with more file types. I like this one in 2022 when this came out, right? Obviously 2 years ago, but it always helps me remind everybody that in your options, sales order, accounts receivable, purchase order, there's a history tab. In that history tab, you have options and settings that how long do I retain history, right? So I always recommend, especially for anybody newer, that you go in and check those settings. Make sure that we are keeping history as long as you want to. Everybody's length of time is different, right? One client might be 10 years, another one might say 5, another might say 20, right? Everybody has a length of time, right? But I always recommend going in and looking at that tab and just saying, hey, does this look right? And if you have questions on and how that works, how long does it save? What are the effects, right? All that. I mean, any of us can help you with that. The big effect, honestly, is just in report writing, right? Like the more history you retain, the more we got to dig through to find information. But I've got clients with all different settings there. And then they made some adjustments too when you're looking at the sales order history inquiry, right? Even with the newer version, they've added some more fields that weren't being captured for the history. They've added it into that inquiry. Item maintenance, they added the quotes count. So if you do sales orders and you do quotes, right? Quotes don't put demand on product, right? So my quantity on sales order, quantity on SO, and item maintenance does not include anything on quotes. But they added the quoted section on the orders tab, so at least you can get an idea of how many were quoted out there, right? Again, came from the Ideas website. Work order module is no longer available. So I believe we have most of our clients off of work order. Not all, but most. High percentage. And the last couple that are in my mind, I think, are actively working to get to production management. At this point in time, there's almost no reason to not be in production management. It's easier to work with and allows a lot more flexibility, better reporting. Just at this point in 2024 version, especially, we don't know of a reason you wouldn't go to that. The nice thing is in the version, and it'll probably come up in the slides, but I think in 23 or version 2023, they finally converted old work order data into production management as well. So now it's all in one module, which is nice. If you're on an older version like 2020, but you have production management, if you upgrade, then work order will still come up and merge into production management. Layout changes with the process in 2022 happened. The copy from button was no longer required, and that was a thing back in the days of 19 and 20 and 21 when ScanForce had originally written the production management module. When Sage took it over from ScanForce, they went through and made things a little more efficient. And even with the newer releases, they've done a lot more of that kind of stuff, right? Layout changes, shortcuts to item maintenance. They added a bunch of things to make it easier to get to information when you're in a work ticket. Layout changes to employees. I actually appreciated this one. The original one was laid out really weird. So they cleaned that up and made it easier for you to work with. What are their pay rates? social security number, all that stuff's in there and is encrypted. I think that'll come up in the slides, right? But you can actually put that information in, and Sage will be compliant, PII compliant, encrypt that data information in the database. They adjusted the time entry layout in 2022, so if you're on 2020 or 21, you would recognize that this is very different and this is much easier to use. A lot of times when people are doing labor entries, right, they are not using this screen a lot. Hopefully, if you're actually tracking a lot of labor, that you're using a scanning solution, much like with the one we have at 3 o'clock today. ScanForce to capture that information, and then it will fill in this labor entry screen and take care of that for you. Info codes were added. So this allows you to capture additional information on the steps. So on a work ticket on the step, you could give it an inspection status. You could just capture special, unique information on that step inside of a work ticket. My item maintenance inquiry, this was actually very useful. They added, so like you look up an item and say, hey, what work ticket's it on? And I can see everything that's a work ticket. I can see how many have been completed, required. If it's raw material, I can see that, hey, these are all the work tickets it's needed on, and here's how many are needed, how many have been used so far, etc. So a lot of good information was added around that stuff. And you'll notice like 2022 was very heavy in the production management module. There's a lot of focus in the manufacturing side over the last couple of years to really make a good tool on this side. The where used was upgraded, and integration with payroll did get improved. We have only a couple that do the payroll integration, right? But again, it's made it easier. You don't have to run a report to push the labor. They just cleaned that process up. So here, I thought it was 23, but it does mention it in 2022 that it can convert the work order history to production management history. So that was a very popular thing. There was a lot of holdback on going to production management because of that. And we've seen all that change, so a lot of people have moved. Inventory requirement planning has significantly increased its feature set over the last few years. In 2022, they added the ability to maintain like projected demands. So you could go in and import this information in by item, by fiscal year, what kind of planning cycle is it, what's the projected demand, so that it would use that in the IRP calculation. Accounts receivable, option to print zero balance customers with no invoices, right? When you're doing statement printing. I mean, I'm sure someone had a reason. I am sure this came from the IDEA site, right? But it is an option now that you can print a statement for zero balance customers and have it sent out. Let's say you use paperless or whatever. So again, a feature add the IDEA's website. A lot of information around 1099 in the purchase accounts payable module was added. Every release in the last couple of years has increased features around that. We'll see this. And so that is often a driver of upgrades, right? Because sometimes the end of year forms, the forms that need to go out or reprinted or electronically sent around all this needs new information, rules change, etc. So Sage keeps up with that, and sometimes that's a trigger for upgrades for a lot of clients. Again, just building off of what they released in 22.3 around the 1099 tax reporting. Production management, they've got the copy from feature. So there was a thing back in 19 and 20 and 21 where you had to copy from. You always had to use this copy from. Well, now you don't. But if you do use the copy from, you can actually set some values in it when you copy from another work ticket, be it a history one, an open one, whatever it is, right? There's some fields that you can now override when you go to do that. Global changes, next lot number button, right? So some people, when you're distributing, like if you are receiving something in, let's say, and you want your own lot number, you can actually just say next lot number and it will assign one to it, right? Summarize material lines in work ticket entry. So again, an option, right, that you can turn on. if it's the same item number, same step number, scrap percentage, etc., it will allow it to combine it. Has to do with unique comments from the materials. So again, it's just a way that it tries to, as you build a work ticket, if you had replicating parts that you're adding in and you just kind of don't summate them yourself, it actually allows it to do it itself. Desktop changes, Information Center was added. So this is kind of like phase 1 in 23 that they did, because we just noticed that we jumped from 22 to 23. Most of us have noticed if we've upgraded to 23 or 24, how this has changed in Sage 100. And so they have a lot of information that they put. It's this right here, this web page, right? And so you can actually go into this and notice, share your ideas is right there, right? Share or vote today. Well, not surprisingly, right? It takes you to the idea site. And as I've asked you to do, you'll log into that and go vote for David's idea, right? So there's a lot of good information here. Product documents, right? So I can go out here. It takes me to a website that has every year, every version, right? What was in it, release notes, checklists, user guides. A lot of good information can be found from this information page. And so it's something that, you know, you can learn about other products they have, etc. So again, a nice little tool that they've added, and I'm sure it's something they're just working and building out on. Okay, so let's go back here. Recent tab added to the ribbon. So at the top of Sage 100 on the screen, if you go to different screens, there's a tab now you can go to, and it shows you the last ones you've been on, right? Somewhat useful, right? It just depends. A lot of people use favorites, so you don't see a lot of recent being used, but favorites, because they keep going to the same screens over and over again. But they did add the recent in there. Expanded tooltips. So when you click on something, it just kind of gives you a little more information now about what it is, or if you hover over it, what is it, right? The last tab accessed in the ribbon persists after exiting Sage 100. So again, what tab were you on? I call these like these are user ease of use, right? Features they've added, right? Just trying to make the user's life a little more simple. You know, one of the things that, you know, we could touch on here real quick is often I get a question of, well, what's it like, right? Maybe I haven't upgraded, maybe I'm newer. What does that process typically look like, right? So when it comes to upgrading, typically what we do is we look at your system with you, right? We'll go through and say, hey, send us your installed module listing, or we'll go get your installed module listing if we have access to your system, right? And we'll look at it, and we actually use a thing called Smartsheet, and we kind of document everything about your system, right? If we've already done upgrades in the last couple of years for you, then we probably have your Smartsheet from before. We'll copy it, and then we'll go through and, hey, do they still use this? Do they still use this, right? And we're looking for what are the features and integrations that you may use, right? Maybe you have ScanForce, maybe you have Inventory Advisor, maybe you have Starship, maybe you have SimCloud, right? And so we kind of want to go through that and then, meet with you and go through it with you. Say, here's all the things we found. What else might you be doing? Because there are some clients, for sure, that do stuff themselves, right, outside of Sage 100, right? Upgrade I did this year was, they probably had 30 or 40 reports outside of Sage 100, right? And so going through the process of documenting all of that, right, while it takes a little time at the beginning, ultimately in the long run, it really saves a lot of headache, right? That we work together. You say, hey, yeah, we did this. And I've had clients that, yeah, we hooked Power BI to Sage 100, right? Okay, well, let's add that to the list because you may have to adjust something in Power BI, right? So that we all stay on one page. And then people say, hey, can you quote us for the work? Absolutely, right? Some are like, hey, we've done a lot of these together. Let's move forward. Roughly how long does it take? Again, some people say, let's do a test run. Maybe it's a new server you're getting, right? So, we can do a test upgrade over to the new server, get you in there, let you play with it, right? And then pick a cutover time to do a real upgrade, right? some upgrades come in and, it's an overnight or evening or day thing, and, it's a small upgrade, right? 4 to 8 hours of our work, maybe, right? Some are big, right? We've had upgrades that are, 30, 40, 60, 80 hours, right? Just depends on what version you're coming from, right? If you're our, 3.70 and you want to go up to 2024, which, I mean, happens. It's happened this last year, right? It takes a lot more time, right? Because you got to jump up through different versions and things like that. But best thing about that is at DoD is we have people that we know how to do that, and we have done that. Especially individuals like a David and a Mary and a Brad who worked with the product back at 4.0 and 3.7. Like, they're familiar with the upgrade steps that happened back then and the problems that we may have run into back then. And all of that, we use for making sure that you have success with that upgrade. So we schedule the upgrade, do the upgrade, maybe bring in third parties that next morning if, hey, ScanForce needs to get in, repoint scanners, right? Sage Inventory Advisor needs to get in and change their system or provide them information. You, as the client, may have to reach out to some of the third parties because they go through you guys, right? So I think of like Starship. Starship is often done through the client, right? So you reach out to their support, hey, we're doing an upgrade, they'll say, okay, here's what you need to do, or here's what we need to change, etc. So we kind of work together so we all understand our role and our in that process. And that go live morning, hopefully, right? We're getting the final things wrapped up and we get you into that system and let you start working. Now, will there be little things? 100%, right? There's always something, right? And you'll see, I think it was in the 2021 release, like Sage expanded their address fields to like 50 characters. Great, awesome, need it, right? Any international addresses, you need all that extra space, right? The problem is if you had a customized Sage 100 customer maintenance screen, right, that when you upgraded, and the same with sales order actually on the address tab, it kind of sometimes did some crazy things, right? Fields moved off the screen to a weird place, things like that, right? Now, ultimately, if we do a test run, right, we'll catch those things and make the changes and save them. If we don't do a test run, we'll get in there and we know just from experience, hey, we should probably go look at these screens, right, before you get in there, and we'll try to rearrange it. But again, nothing that's a showstopper. We get on there, change, drag the screen because you're like, hey, that field isn't where it was. It was over here, right? And we moved it because it was really in the wrong place. Often they're just little things, right? A report that doesn't seem to want to run for some reason or things like that. And so usually that first day is the day of like working together, communicating, checking in. Hey, is everything okay? Just had one Friday, right? It seemed to go really smooth, right? We jokingly say on our side, like, if there are no problems, like, then what are the problems we're missing? Like, what is going to go wrong? And nothing really went wrong. It went really smooth and everything upgraded and everything works great. And it's a good feeling, right? But I'm sure somewhere along the line this week, someone's going to say, hey, this isn't there, or this report looks weird, or something will come up, right? And so that's kind of where, us working together up front, let's target everything that we need to target, make sure we're all on the same page so that when it comes that go live day of an upgrade or implementation of an ERP, we're all on the same page and working together to make sure we catch all those little things. Okay, so box is over. Let's keep going with 2023. This isn't really exciting for you guys. It's kind of cool for us people that do this install stuff. Sage simplified the install process, where if you're on premium, which is the SQL backend, or you're on advanced, or you're on standard, right? It just simplified the addition that we are using. And we actually really appreciated this because it was getting confusing around license keys and versions and all these different things. If you're on Sage 100 subscription, it just became a lot simpler. If you're on perpetual, which we've only got a few clients that are, but if you are, then this isn't really an option. They have different options for perpetual and this stuff. But this has been nice. Most of our clients are running advanced and premium. We have a few on standard, but people often ask, what's the difference, right? So standard is often, I'm running Sage 100 standard if I have maybe 10 or less users, right? It works much like maybe Microsoft Access, if anybody remembers that thing, or Excel. Like there's a file on the server, and when you open the icon on your desktop, right, there's not actually a client installed. It's launching on your machine, and it's just pulling and writing data to the files on the server. Sage 100 Advanced, right? Now it's got this ProvideX database. It's got a service running on the server, and when you open Sage 100 on your workstation, right? It's a client install. It actually then reaches out to the service on the server, says, "Hey, I want you to give me a list of all my customers and customer maintenance." It processes that request on the server and then sends back to the workstation. Here's the results. And then Premium, the biggest difference there is Sage 100 Premium uses SQL Server as the backend instead of the ProvideX flat file system that Advanced uses. Okay, clients that are on Premium, typically we're seeing are larger in nature. They have integrations they want to do, advanced reporting they want to do, because being on SQL Server, right, and having that license does open, your capabilities a little bit, or makes them easier to integrate with different reporting systems. Again, simplification, which one are we using, right? Again, makes my life easier. You guys probably don't notice, but it does. Changes they made to the installation process. If you're not using Sage CRM, no longer do we have to install this integration service. This is useful, especially if you're not using CRM, because this was our one spot in the installation of Sage 100 ERP where we had to have a domain account, no matter what, to be able to pass through this screen. And now they'll at least let us skip it, so we don't have to do that if you're not using Sage CRM. And you can always come back and reinstall it, right? I mean, we got a lot of clients out there that use Sage CRM for a few users, right? And so we can go back in, we can install the integration engine and hook it all up. But it was nice during the initial setup, you didn't necessarily have to do that. All right, other serial number by range. So they've added this in the lot serial distribution. So if you're in an example here is invoice data entry, shipping data entry, whatever it is, it does allow you to select multiple serial numbers in a range if you so need to, right? If you're doing serialized invoicing, etc., I mean, it depends on obviously how many orders you're processing, etc. A lot of times you're seeing a scanning solution come into play so that people can ship and scan those serial numbers, etc., and feed this information automatically. Years to retain history. So again, back to that in my earlier comment, it's probably important to go back and look at your history tab in accounts receivable, purchase order, whatever it is, so that you can look to see how many years you are retaining the history in the system, right? What we don't like is getting in there and then finding out that, hey, it was set to 5 years, and you're like, well, where did it go? And we're looking, we're like, well, it was 5 years. Well, why is it only 5 years? Because no one changed it, right? One of the things that years to retain cash receipt history, right? I think initially back on 2020 or before, I think it said something about like months to retain. Like, I mean, the settings have changed over the years. So again, every year or two, I get on this and say, hey, let's check that and make sure that we're saving our historical information in the way that we want. Activity log updates. So there is in Sage 100 in your modules the ability to go look at your activity log of Sage 100. This can be very useful, and we use it, right? If we get in there into a system and someone says, hey, something doesn't look right, like someone did something, or I had one client that was like, did someone change rights, right? And so this activity log lets us go in and see, hey, someone updated this role, right? Who was it? When did they do it? Etc. So there's a lot of good information system-wide. If there's an error message that comes up, right, it's a way for us to go back into the system and look for the error message, see when it happened, see if there's anything around it that maybe give us a hint of why it might be happening. And you can do the same thing, right? I think it says when the accounts payable remove inactive vendors utility is run, or remove inactive customers are run, right? This log is updated with that list of who it was they removed. So again, just some information that can be very useful, especially when it comes to troubleshooting or trying to figure something out. You can go into it, you can pull it up, you can look for a range. There's a lot more options. It used to be really horrible, like couldn't run it with anybody in the system, etc. It has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. iShip replacement. So this was a thing. I remember this all first broke. So there's a company out there that Sage and a lot of other systems used, that when you had a tracking number and in there you could just click on the button and it would take you to the iShip page and it would show you the tracking information, right? I think it was early 23, if my memory serves me correctly, that all of a sudden that broke. And we actually wrote our own buttons for some clients. Sage finally got with another group and changed it so their button uses it. But there was a moment in there where nobody could easily, right? You could take the tracking number, paste it into Google, or go to the shipper and, paste it there and find it. But this little cheat button, if you will, wasn't working. But it is now working and working well. Crystal Reports has been updated. This has been, some places worked really well. Other places we've run into a few hiccups here and there. Sometimes it really depends on the fitness of the other application that's trying to use this. So Sage 100 is fine, right? Sage 100 works great with it. What we run into is other applications that you may have installed that use Crystal Report runtimes on software that hasn't been updated in some years. When you install the Crystal Report runtimes for 2020, it breaks those things, right? Because those programs haven't updated, and Sage is updating, and so that can cause some problems. Crystal Reports 2020 is a 64-bit application. Why is that important? Well, and not to get super nerd here, but if you set up ODBC or connections to data, right, there's a 32-bit ODBC and a 64-bit ODBC. You have to set it up in 64-bit so that Crystal Reports can see it, right? So, for example, Sage Alerts and Workflow works off of a 32-bit process, right? So it sees 32-bit ODBCs. It will let you run Crystal Reports, right, that you made in 2020, right? But it runs it against the 32-bit ODBC. So you have to make sure that whatever you connect to in 64-bit to make the report is something you can connect to, and then in a 64-bit way. And then you also have to be able to connect to it in a 32-bit way. That has been a little problematic because sometimes people are using Access databases that are 32-bit, right, not 64. So now Crystal can't call that Access database, look up data, and tie it, match it to the sales order in Sage or whatever the integration is with that, right? Because maybe Access didn't have a 64-bit, version of whatever they're using. So again, it's just something to be aware of. We've already gone through a lot of that, right, over the last year and a half or so. So we're very aware of this. And typically when we go through that smart sheet that I talked about, we're often looking at, hey, what is broke? What could we break, right? What could be our problems? Do you have Sage Alerts and Workflow, right? How does it affect that? If you use a tool, a lot of our clients are familiar with it. It's called Visual Cut. That's often what we use to integrate or to automate reports and things like that. Actually, it's had no effect on that tool, right? It works 64, 32, doesn't care. So again, situational, we'll give you some guidance as we go through it. When it comes to during an upgrade, an important piece of knowledge is if you're on an older version of Sage 100 that says it uses Crystal Reports 2016. On a workstation, we've got to uninstall any Crystal Reports 2016. We install the old version of the Sage 100 workstation. Then we install the new version of Sage 100's workstation, which then puts the new 2020 Crystal Reports runtimes on it. And then if that person needs Crystal Reports 2020, we can install that. Moral of that story is, when we do an upgrade, we often want to uninstall all the old version stuff and install the new version so we don't have conflicts and errors. Oh, accounts payable. So MAS, the 1099 vendor taxpayer ID, Social Security. So, and they did this with bank account numbers too. And so there's security settings and role maintenance that tie back to allowing the view, printing, editing of highly sensitive 1099, ACH, bank, different pieces of information, right? So every once in a while we'll get a support email that says, hey, I can't see my whatever number or something along those lines, right? It's often because rights have changed. One thing after an upgrade, that's something we try to be cognizant of, is Sage will add things to role maintenance. They'll add new features, they'll set a security setting with it, etc. Well, when it upgrades, it doesn't give everybody access to those things, right? Because it doesn't want people just willy-nilly seeing this all of a sudden again. So sometimes you have to go in there and make adjustments to the security system settings under role maintenance after an upgrade. This being a perfect example of it, right? They have to mask this information just because of the rules and the regulations out there. So when they did that, right, these options are turned off for users when we upgrade. So often we want to identify who does AP that should see this information and make sure it gets turned back on for them. Here's, expanding upon what I just talked about, right? The MAS, the ACH, bank account, and routing numbers. Now, I had another client a month or two ago reach out and say, hey, we went to Sage 100 Premium. Why can't I see the bank account numbers? Why can't I see my employees' information? Well, it's encrypted, right? At rest or in the database, that information is encrypted. You cannot see. I can't go into SQL Server and go into your database and query and say, what's Susie's social security number? What's the bank account number, right? 10 years ago, 100% could, right? I always thought that was kind of crazy. I could get into a system and I could see every employee and every social security number, right? And Sage wasn't alone in that. Like, that was every system, right? And so a lot of that has been marked as requirements to encrypt that information at rest, right? In case someone, unfortunately, bad actors out there stealing our data, stealing the database, right? Well, now it's encrypted. You're not going to get the person's social security number, right? If we're running payroll in Sage 100, someone was somehow to get into your database and steal your employee data, that's encrypted, right? It doesn't show you that information. So, again, there's settings around it in role maintenance so that you can see it within Sage 100. There's ways to make Crystal reports that show that information. You have to have, there's just a certain method that you have to build that Crystal report with. To pull the information out of Sage 100 programmatically, you actually have to use what's called Business Object Interface. You could reach into Sage 100 with Business Object Interface, pull the information, write it to a database. There are ways to work around it. I've seen clients add UDFs and put information in it. I just want to be clear, we don't recommend that, right? Because we are supposed to be encrypting this information, but I've seen it. So, accounts payable, the invoice. This was always a favorite one. They put a checkbox so you just select the invoices for payment. Just people seem to like that more than the control click thing, right? Now I just click a checkbox and I can select what invoices I want to pay. Inventory management, the option to hide inactive warehouses, right? So there's a little button on the right. If you go into inventory and you go to setup, you go to warehouses and you inactivate warehouse, right? You can make it so it doesn't show it in item maintenance or item inquiry. Now, in 2024, you're going to see they actually took that to a whole nother level. Very useful. Remove inactive items utility, right? So the ability to go through and remove items that you have marked inactive. Now, this one and a couple other ones that we'll probably cover here in the next half hour, I always tell people these things take time to run. If you've got 10 years of invoice history in your Sage 100 and you say, I want to remove inactive items from my system, right? Well, it's got to go through all your invoices and say, well, that item doesn't exist anymore, right? There's a delete and change items utility that some people use that say, merge these 100 items into one item code, right? Great, we can totally do that. What we have to do, though, is copy the live company to a test company. And then we've got to go through and run that utility with whatever that you want to do and kind of time it, because you can't be in the system when it's doing the work, and it has to go through every single table that has item information in it for history. So purchase order, right, history, invoice history, any manufacturing history, whatever it is, they have to go through all the lines of that table, change all those item codes to this new item code, and that can take time, right? Some, maybe it's quick because you haven't been using it that long, right? Maybe it's 30 minutes, right? I had one that they wanted to process, and it took 48 hours, right? Like, it took a long time for it to run. So you've got to plan when you do these kinds of things to some degree. You've got to test and see, hey, is this a quick update or is this a long extended update? So that you don't find yourself on Monday morning going, well, why can't we use Sage? Or, Wednesday morning, can someone kick it off Tuesday night? Well, why can't we use Sage? It's still running this process, right? It's still processing the removal of all the items and all of history. So it's something to consider, and we'll see other areas where this comes into play as well. Show hide zero clients for lot zero items and cost detail, right? So again, that really comes in handy if you just want to see the stock items you have, right? And you want to see the information about that cost detail for just the stock, in-stock items, click the button, right? It shows and hides that zero quantity. IRP. So again, I mentioned that in 23, 24, they put a lot more into this, and they just keep building it out. So new field and active effective date field, sales. Do we include sales order quotes in this, right? Do we explode, right, based on the parent item, right? How do we create the work ticket? Do we, with the materials, is it from a bill of materials? Is it from a work ticket template? Like, what is it, right? So they went through and just added a lot more options as they keep getting feedback and really worked on building this tool out. And I believe in 2023 is when they also allowed us to schedule at night through a task scheduler task to build the IRP data, right? Because building IRP data can take some time, right? That one of those things, like, you want to kick it off at 8 o'clock at night and just let it run. So maybe it takes 6 hours to build that data, right? For what are all the sales orders, what are the items, what are all the work tickets, what items do they need? Here's all the ones you need to make for work tickets. Here's all the things you may need to purchase, right? All of the data can take time to, depending on your volume of orders and different things like that, can take some serious time. They added a feature to allow us to set it and run it at night so that the next morning you come in and it's already there. Again, expanding information around IRP. You can view summary information with items of pending actions, different things like that. You can drill into it, click on an item, click a button, and it will show you, like, every transaction that's reducing the stock or adding stock and when it's going to run out. So they just give you a little more detailed information about every item that it's recommending. And I mentioned this was, a big one. This is the scheduling of the IRP with Task Scheduler, right? The Task Scheduler is an interesting tool. Everybody's got it. You can, and you have, this is kind of a weird thing, but you have to run a setup of this on the server. So you can't do this from a workstation. It doesn't quite work the way you would expect it to, I think, in that regard. But what it lets us do, example, is run Task Scheduler task, right, to do reports. But where we've also seen it used is, let's say we wanted to kick off a VI job on a schedule, right? Again, not if it's a schedule that's like every 5 minutes, it absolutely doesn't work that way. Not a good way to use it. But if you had one a day, right, you're going to run one VI job a day or something, maybe that's a good use case for it. Journals and registers, that's often where we see it used, right? So some people just post the very first step in the posting process, right? They don't actually do the GL side of things, but maybe we set the registers to run at night, right, at 10 o'clock at night, and it goes through the modules and posts all the registers for them. Some people do journals and registers at night, right? 10 o'clock every night, post all my transactions that are in batches on invoice data entry, whatever that is. They also have the ability to schedule system reports to be emailed out of Task Scheduler. It isn't, I'm just being honest, not near as flexible as using a tool like Visual Cut, right? This works with reports that are pre-built in the system, right? Most people that are automating reports are not automating the pre-built necessarily, but know that it's there and it has those sorts of features. I'm going to pause for a second because I start talking and sometimes I don't shut up when I should. Ms. Sherry, I just wanted to check in with you to see if there was any questions or anything that I needed to be aware of.
I don't see any questions right now, Chris.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to use the chat box, and we'll answer them as Chris goes along.
Okay. Thanks, Sherry. I am providing so much knowledge, everybody. It's like, that is amazing. I have no questions. That's a joke. Okay. IRP, again, I think I mentioned this on the other screen, right? Kind of getting ahead of myself just from some experiences, right? They've really built out that expanded summary detail information if you use IRP. Here you can see that I pulled the item detail. I can see it's going to be used in a work ticket. I can see it's being sold in the sales order, right? When we should probably make it, right? That kind of thing. And just so you're aware, I mean, I look at Sage 100 and I think there's 3 levels of this kind of IRP idea, right? One, you've got inside of item maintenance. If you go to warehouses under the More button and you look at your, let me just pop it up and I'll show you guys. Let's go into item maintenance real quick. Pull up an item, go to the More button, and we're going to go to the reorder, okay? Inside of here, you get, right, a reorder method, what's the reorder point quantity, right, max on hand, min order quantity. I mean, you get to set up some basic information, right, that says, and then I can, in turn, based on, I've imported that information, I've entered that manually, whatever it is, right, there's reorder reports, right, that I can run that uses that information to say, hey, reorder this, right, based on the information I have in my system, right? Here's an item, right? What's the method? What's the on-hand quantity on POS, so backward available, right? Do I need to order any, right? Well, it's no, but no, I need to order 35 of this. Why is that, right? And I can look across and see that information. So that's kind of like step 1, right? People start using that usually pretty quick, and that kind of gets you going. IRP is kind of that next step in the process, right? Some people will go to IRP. If you're in manufacturing, you see this sometimes as the next step. If you're in distribution, sometimes this one gets skipped. because there is, as I mentioned before, one called Sage Inventory Advisor, right, that plugs into Sage 100, and then it uploads or pulls data out of Sage 100 and provides recommendations on what you need to order. If you're a seasonal company, it can handle seasonality and tell you based on actual vendor performance, you probably should order this now, which is 5 months ahead of time because your vendor takes 4 months to get it to you, etc. So it can help you really plan your purchasing. And it actually has an option to push the purchase orders back down into Sage 100 from the Sage Inventory Advisor tool. So it's a really neat tool. I had a client that loved it so much that I worked with them last year, and we wrote an integration with a completely different system that handles laundry. We wrote this whole thing to pull data from it and write it into the format of Sage 100 tables that Inventory Advisor uses, so they could use Sage Inventory Advisor for their laundry system, right? That's how much they loved the information it gave them, right? It rated their products. It just gave them a lot of insight to what's going on with their inventory. So again, there's 3 levels of it. Just depends on where you're at in your journey of what's useful.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
We did have a couple questions pop in.
Okay.
Okay, so Christy is asking, when historical information is removed from Sage, can it ever be retrieved or is it permanently deleted?
So there's 2. Okay, so it depends on which part we're talking about. If we merge or delete item codes, right? That I mean, the item information is gone, right? If we choose to do that. If we have history information based on the history settings in a module, some settings only remove the history from the summation tables. So what do I mean by that? It means the invoice detail information stays, right? I know by looking at the data tables, here's an invoice and everything on it, right? But what I may do on some settings is I may say I only want the summated, right, for the last 5 years. What it means is there's a table in Sage that says, here's an item, here's its warehouse, its fiscal year, fiscal month, well, how many did we sell, right? How many did we buy? How many were returned? Like, it has the summated information. Some of those settings in the history just remove it from that, right? Another one is, and this is one that comes up often, honestly, over in inventory management, right? There's a setting that you set up when you, what version was that? 2021, 2020, purchase order history happened, right? Well, a lot of people were going to the orders tab and looking at the purchase orders listed, and all of a sudden they would do this history thing, run their period in, and a lot of it was gone, right? Well, that's because this screen, right, looks at the open purchase order table. Even though they're completed purchase orders, they may have still been sitting in the open purchase order table, right? When Sage added the history, right, it moved it to the history table, but didn't provide that to the screen anymore, right? So we wrote an enhancement that lists open and history so people could still see it. So I wouldn't say, again, depending on the setting you're talking about, you would probably want to just double check with one of our consultants and say, hey, if I change this setting, right, would it remove any detail? The answer is typically no, right? But there are ways to purge information out of Sage 100 that would be old data, right? So I'd want to make sure that you're not talking about that when it comes to it. But the detail information typically is kept. The summary information, as an example here, right? This is where often those settings will no longer show in here, right? I wouldn't maybe have fiscal year 2010, 2014 anymore, right? It would all be zeros, right? Because I have a setting set to contain the history for that. But if I go to transactions, I would still see, because it's the transactional information, item transaction history typically is never removed. So, great question.
All right.
While
you've got Sage 100 up,
yep.
Martin is asking, where was the inventory report found again?
Oh, yeah, inventory here. Let me, again, user, I will scale, application scaling, right? Get a little larger there. Inventory management, reports, inventory reorder report right here. And if I was like, hey, that's my favorite, I would drag it over to favorites. You notice I've done this a few times, and I would add it so that then I could just always go to my favorites and click it.
All right. And then the last question that we have right now is, I was told that purchase clearing by period would be available in 2023. Is that accurate?
I believe what you're referring to is, and I think it's going to come up in the slides, but if I remember right, we have a purchases clearing report that you run at period end right here. So yes, they definitely added that.
All right. That's it for questions right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sherry. All right. I was thinking that slide's going to come up here shortly, so good question. Production management, just note, I mean, we don't really have anybody who does this, to be honest, but you can import material lines on a work ticket, just FYI. And then the lot zero history has been added to work ticket history inquiry, so good to know, right? Because they can get into the work ticket, see what lot numbers were used, etc. Purging work ticket history. So to your question, again, right? The history settings and the options typically don't get rid of detail, right? Again, double check before you change, but here's an example of purge work ticket history, right? I had a client run that, right? Didn't ask. And they're like, well, where's all of our information? I'm like, the activity log says this person ran it. It's gone, right? So useful tools, right? If I had work order history, right, for 15 years, I probably don't need that much detail, right? But again, right, check it. Let's make sure that we're doing the right steps and not having consequences we weren't expecting, let's say. Work ticket template maintenance, they did add scrap percentage for items in that. Again, some people use bill of materials for all their materials. Some people use within the work ticket template in the step, they add materials, right? If you're using miscellaneous items and you want to use them in production management in your work ticket, you have to use it in the work ticket template materials tab. But they did add the scrap percentage there. Oh, labor entry. So again, just improvements on it. One of the things that they added was the ability to select a department that the employee actually worked in, which is different potentially than the assigned department for that employee, right? That was a thing that I think I actually ran into in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember which one it was, but we had people, you know, clocking into different departments, and in Sage was always defaulting them into their department, and you weren't really getting a good picture of where that labor was going. That was a great improvement that they added. Activity codes and work setters on the fly, so it allowed you to take a work ticket, right? Because in a work ticket, I can build out everything before I, release it, so I can add materials to it. It may start with a bomb, but I can add more to it or change it or remove things, etc., right? And then there are some places that are so on the fly or unique things that they want to try to do that you couldn't in a work ticket just randomly add an activity code in Work Center, right? So in 23, they added that ability so that you could launch and add those things as you went. And then relieve WIP based on a percent complete, right? So especially if you're getting into standards and different things like that, when you enter a partial completion or ticket transaction, it would use a prorated cost of the WIP that's out there. That would be maybe auto issue, like you put all the WIP in at the beginning, right? And then you say, hey, I'm only completing 5 of the 10, so take 50% of what's in WIP when I release this, right? So that was a great add as well. Explode sub-assemblies. So there were some things that were up in this copy from box, etc., right? And then there's settings within setting up your work ticket templates and you're in the process of creating work tickets. And they broke a few of those things out into options within the work ticket itself so that maybe normally we don't explode, but maybe on this one we want to, right? So again, options that they've added just based on requests, idea site, 90 minds, things like that, hey, we have a use case, it's very legitimate. Sometimes we do need to explode, right, the bills, sub-assemblies, etc. So they've added features around that. Production management, so recalculate the materials budget. So they've made this a little bit better. And I think in the newest version, they've made it even better because this really kind of always bothered me. You'd go in and work on a work ticket and add materials, add all these things. You had to actually go back to the steps buttons to click on the recalculate the budgets. So they added to the materials tab now. So I'm in a work ticket, I'm messing with the materials before I release it, etc. I could click on that recalculate material budget when I'm done so that Sage knew, hey, on the totals tab, this is the new budget I want you to use, right? Now you don't have to go to the steps tab and click drop down and say recalculate. So they just made it easier. I'll be honest, not quite where I want it to be. I feel like, why do I have to click that button, right? But, baby steps, we'll say. And then the copy from, I think we talked about this, just being able to change the production start date, some fields based on when I copy from a work ticket. And then when we create a work ticket, they've added this option so that you can choose the default of where it pulls from the materials from. Maybe it's a bill and the template. Maybe it's just the bills. Maybe it's just the template. Maybe it prompts you to say, hey, pull from, and you choose which one you want it to pull from, right? So again, options around that production management work ticket process. Next slot number, we kind of talked about that already, just through the modules and different things like that. We talked about this, so I think, here we go. Edit start and end times and labor injury. So they made some changes to security settings around this, right? You can switch it so that you can edit them or not edit them, something that has to do with scanners and different things like that. 2024, so the newest one. So let's dive into that, right? We got about 30 minutes. Resource button has been added. So again, providing a lot of information to you right within Sage 100. That resources tab, you'll notice, has the knowledge base in it, right? Great resource to get into, learn about, service cases out there. You can search them just like we can search them, right? I'll be honest, it's kind of an art form in and of itself. You've got the community. I recommend getting involved in that. They have a Sage City out there that, we're active in, we look at, we use as a resource, right? There's a lot of information shared out in that community about process, about bugs, about how do I integrate things. Like, there's just a wealth of knowledge out there. The learning area takes you over to what's called Sage U. Depending on your subscription, depending on, a few different things, you should have access to Sage U in some form. It's really a great tool for people that have never used Sage 100. Maybe you're bringing in a new person, right, and you just want to let them learn general about Sage 100, then you can put them in that, right, and say, hey, spend some time learning about this module. Now, it's not necessarily like exactly your way of doing it, right? So that's typically where that can be valuable or not valuable. But again, it's a great way to get someone started getting familiar with Sage 100. If you think about when we start a new consultant, Chris in our group, one of the first things he did within the first month was go through the Learning Center, right? And just start getting exposure and learning about some basic ways and things like that. So again, Sage U is very valuable. Enhanced Audit Trail. This one I do recommend what 2024 people have yet is to make sure that this is on. It's useful. So It allows you to go in and run a report to see what has been changed. What field, what was the original value, what's the new value. There's a lot of good information that it captures, right? And before, with these audit reports, you had to get everybody out of the system, which was extremely not useful, to be able to run them. And now they've made it so you don't have to do that you can run the reports. There is the ability to purge, right, which is very important because, like, if you can imagine, if you've got, 50 users of Sage 100 and they're in there changing stuff all day, every day, right, customers and vendor, whatever it is, right, in a couple of years, those tables are going to have a lot of data in them, right? And so they give us purge buttons now to go in and say, hey, get everything out of there that's older than a year, right? Different ways to maintain this audit information. It also, I think, falls into, as they build towards compliance on auditing, what people are changing what in the system. So there is an audit trail in all versions, right? They've just improved it. And so I think it's important that we look at that real quick just to see it. So in accounts receivable, right, there is an audit report. If you have auditing turned on, which now that I say that, I'm wondering if I have auditing turned on. So let's go look at that real quick. Accounts receivable options, right? And so I have customer changes to track set to none, right? So perfect example of I should probably check my settings, right? So then I can say I want to do deletions, additions, changes, or just do everything. And then do I do it in detail? Yes, I do, right? So now with that on, right, if I come out here and I make a change to the customer record, right, and I come back in and run my reports, right, I'll probably log out of Sage, to be honest, and come back in. But now I'll have the access to the audit report that this is talking about, right? And any change I make, I can see, right? And most versions have a version of this, but they've really improved what this captures. So again, a great thing to look at and research your settings on. ALE lookups, this was a small little thing, user experience thing that I loved. If you ever go in and use these lookups, which I mean, all of us do, but you change the search criteria here, it always deleted the word that was there and you had to retype it. That was annoying. So, again, I think this was a 90 Minds thing. Now, in 2024, when you change this, it doesn't delete the word you have there. So, little thing, but a nice little thing that they've picked up on. Restricted mode for administrator task and testing. So, this was a new thing they've added. You can basically, as an admin in the system, go in and put restricted mode on. That means only users that have the role setting to allow access during restricted mode can access the system. So, perfect example of this is I want to do an enhancement, right? We put the enhancement in, right? I call over there and say, hey, let's test this enhancement real quick. I can turn on restricted mode. I can set certain people at that company to say you're allowed in during restricted mode. They can get in and test it. And then Mary over here in accounting isn't getting in and trying to enter cash receipts, right? And now it's causing us problems because we've got to get her back out and this, that, and the other, right? I can control that access and only allow certain people in during that time, right? So a nice little enhancement that they've added for this year. Another enhancement they've added, email notification for task scheduler jobs. So I mentioned the jobs that we can automate through task scheduler. One of the fun things about that was you never knew why it didn't like your work, or did it work, or what's going on. Now, this has got a little thing that will send an email notification when the job succeeds or fails, right? Most likely you're going to want it on failure because if it succeeded, then you would probably see the result of that, right? Think of turning that on for something like maybe doing the generate inventory IRP, right? If it failed for some reason, send it to me, right? Or in that case, maybe you want to know that it succeeded, so send it every time it succeeded. So when you come in the morning, hey, I know it worked, right? So a nice little tool that they added. This is a little one that's kind of really nice. Autocomplete search index automatically updated. So this whole search index thing, and they had task schedule jobs, and it was sometimes the task schedule jobs would not work right, blah, 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 blah. They finally got it to the point now where it indexes as people, of course, as you turn this on, make the changes, right? It rebuilds the indexes and it puts the information in as people are actively doing things. You no longer have to rebuild these indexes for searching when you're using like the type ahead features, etc. Few detail and results of electronic delivery. So the detail button has been added, and you can click it about a document, and it tells you the date, time, what the status was, when it was submitted, etc. Now, this is always a thing. So Sage thinks that it sent it, right? Like it went out. Your email server has its own mind, and it decides to, oh, I've accepted it, but I'm not going to send it. Sage has no idea that it didn't send it, right? I mean, from its point of view, I gave it to Microsoft 0365. It said I took it, right? It should deliver from there, right? Now, what happens past that, it can't see. So what I've recommended to a lot of clients over the years is you can put an email address in when you're doing your paperless office stuff or a customer setup or whatever. You can always add an email address on there. If you have something like AR at or something that is, a generic box, essentially, you consider adding that to every one of them you set up. Why? Because when it sends, Sage sends it out, 0365 or whatever you're using, right? It says, I got it. And then it turns and sends. You should see the emails come into that AR box, right? If you don't see those emails, something went wrong, right? If Sage says, hey, I did my job, right? Now you can look at 0365 and say, hey, what happened, right? So it does help understand what's going out the door. You also have, especially in this day and age, a lot around the like spam filters and things, right? Picking up emails and blocking them and things like that. So this also gives you that validation that, hey, it's sent. I can see it in my AR at, right, my company name or whatever. I see that it's sent to you, right? So it's got to be something on your end. You need to whitelist us, whatever that is, right? So it is something I recommend doing. They've added a little bit to it, right? A little better filtering. The screen is better set up for searching, right? They made improvements around it, but again, Sage can only see so far into the process. Something that I'm coming a little excited about, but I mean, this is new, so I want to make sure that's clear. This is brand new. Sage has added something called Sage Connect. So Sage Connect is an application we would install on the server, and its purpose is to upload data from Sage 100 into the Sage Network platform. So the Sage Network platform is also where something like Sage Intacct works with, right? And what it does is allows them to kind of put all this information in there and then provide a tool, right, for multiple, of Sage products, right, that someone could go in and say, look at invoices, right? Where it also comes into play is over in Europe, right? We have some clients that actually operate in Europe. There's some e-invoicing being required, right? Some new rules on data sharing between companies and invoicing and stuff like that. And so Sage is already ahead of that a little bit because they are so big in Europe. And so this tool, this Sage Connect, is going to be able to let someone log in, see their invoices at this time, right? And then it will also offer e-invoicing capability to send, receive, and track invoices. That's an EU requirement that's coming. Where I see this growing, let's be honest, because right, like how is Sage gonna make money off that? Where this is growing into is, it wouldn't be shocking to me if this all of a sudden is, well, now you can also pay your invoices on here, right? So this is something I think that they are really working on building out. They talk about it in the Sage Intacct world, Sage 100 world, right? in the different Sage mid-market platforms and above, X3, right? They're talking about using this Sage network, and part of that is plugging Sage 100 into it. So I'm excited about what the potential is. We do not have anybody using it. This is new, right? So we're always kind of hesitant, right? I'm sure somebody out there will raise their hand and say, hey, can we set this up and just see what it does? And sure, right? Like we're very curious ourselves to see it built out a little bit more, et cetera. So just know that this is new in 2024, and we're kind of just watching it to see. I've got one client specifically that needs the Europe thing, and off the top of my head. So, you know, maybe by the end of this year, we may have someone trying to play with this, because I think the requirement in the EU, if I remember correctly, was end of next year. So, enhancement to the vendor maintenance tab. Again, a lot of information around 1099. You can track W-9 forms for a vendor. You can track taxpayer ID, Social Security numbers for non-1099 vendors. So again, building out that information around 1099s or keeping that information that you need about your vendor. This is a weird one that was like, I'll be honest, I didn't even know it wasn't in there. Like my brain, it should have been in there. Customer maintenance, we all know that there's a date established field. Hi, my name is Chris, and I didn't know that wasn't a vendor field too. Kind of surprised me. They've added it, and you can edit this field with appropriate security, and you can say, hey, when was the vendor established? I mean, the data, you always have date created, things like that, but the established does work a little different. I think it's based off like first transactions, etc. Here's one that I thought was interesting. I've written scripts over the years for shipping data entry, SO invoice data entry, receipt of goods entry. Basically, they've added a checkbox that if you click it, right, it'll clear the back order from the receipt of goods, right? So it won't back order this, right? We put a button on the screens to do that, right? So now Sage has added a checkbox. You can click it, and then it just takes all the back order quantities to zero for you. I like this one. A new order status of received has been added. So when a purchase order has been received, right, through receipt of goods, but not invoiced yet, the status of that purchase order will say received, right? Now, if it's back ordered, it'll say back order, right? But if you say, hey, I'm putting a receipt of goods in, I clear all the back orders, I hit go and I post it, well, you just told it, it's not being back ordered, this is what I've received, its status would switch to received, right? A little thing, but actually pretty useful, because now anything that says received, we know hasn't been invoiced when we do a lookup, right, in purchase order entry of everything that is of status received. This was one that came up, actually, this last week. I was able to, actually, I think it was Rick and Mary that were like, no, it's a thing. Ability to express automatic display of extended item description and item maintenance and other modules. So if you know, like you go in and you pick an item and all of a sudden a pop-up appears and it's the extended description, right? Well, you don't have to have that pop-up anymore, right? Thankfully, because sometimes you're not trying to edit that, right? You know, you got to close it, things like that. Little thing, again, user experience important. This is a big one. Let's take a second and celebrate the moment. So they've added and built on the ability to delete a warehouse and change or merge a warehouse. So this has been something we have had requested many times over, right? And logistically, for us to write it was a thing, right? Because there's just so many tables and things involved. So Sage finally, from the idea site, I believe, wrote this. And so you can, and Rick wrote a great article and made a video of it. So if you go to our website, I wonder if I have that on my other screen. Let's go look. I did. Okay, look at me. So on our website, Sage 100 software tips, right? Resources, software tips, Sage 100, right? The very top one, how to remove a warehouse in Sage 100. You can hit play. Rick shows you exactly how to do this. There's a download. That is a document that literally shows you step by step what it will do, right? A couple of POs, an SO invoice, right? Showing you, hey, look, all these warehouses on here. It's on a work ticket. And here's all those warehouses. And I'll zoom in because none of us can see that. I can't barely, right? There's all the warehouses. And then new utility, right? And I can put in a range of warehouses. And I can say, hey, I want to merge these guys together. And then all of a sudden, I run the utility. It's very detailed, and we appreciate that, right? We preview it. We see what it's going to do. We tell it to do it, and then it does it. All those open PO invoices say 01 now, right? This, I don't know if it's a sales order or what, but it's 01. Invoice shows 01. The work ticket, production management shows 01 now, right? And item maintenance, now I've got only 2 warehouses. So this was a brand new feature added in 2024, right? I'm going to, again, caveat this with you need to test run it in a test company if you're to do this to understand how long it takes to run, right? We have barely done any of the testing on this to get an idea in my head of how long this takes, right? Since this is a brand new feature. But in my mind, all the tables that are affected, it's got to go through all my invoice detail and say, hey, that warehouse that was 004 went to 001, right? And so it's got to update all of those records, right? So something to keep in mind. But it's a great write-up on how to do it, a great video on how to do it. And I want to real quick touch on this page. This is a great page to go to learn about different things in Sage 100, how to do them. We do a video, we do a write-up, just because people learn different ways. And it really does have a lot of good information in it on many different subjects. We can go technical, exporting to Excel data. How does that work? How do I, connect Excel to Sage 100, right? How do I reverse an accounts payable check in Sage 100, right? A lot of information that can be found on this page. I mean, you can see it's a joy. All of us consultants rotate, right, monthly, writing some sort of thing like this, right? And so, connecting Excel to Sage 100. I think I did this one, right? I need to play. I walk through how to connect to the ODBC to pull it into Excel, right? So again, I mean, a great tool on our website to learn more about Sage 100, etc. Okay. So another enhancement, user preferences. This was an interesting little one, but the more I thought about it, I kind of liked it. There's an option under user maintenance to change the order quantity to red when it's less than the quantity available in the warehouse. So if I just pull up sales order entry, I can look at a sales order, look at the lines, hey, I don't have enough to fill that order, right? I'm red, right? So it says, because right here at the bottom, it's saying I have 17, negative 17. So I've got a negative tier going in that warehouse right now, right? So I definitely can't sell 3 of them, right? Now, obviously, I've got a lot of questions. Why do I have a negative number, right? Who didn't get the receipt of goods in to make it not negative 17? And is that FIFO? And do I need to run my negative tier report after I get the stuff in to fix everything? But here, for a sales order entry, based on this setting in user maintenance, it can show it red based, on my option setting. When we run the production management cost roll-up register, right? So we're trying to do what's the standard cost going to be, or whatever average cost of the item. How does it know where does it pull material from, right? So again, in that cost roll-up register, right, it's going to pull that information. Explode the bill without production management integration. So Sage did add it so that you do not have to have production management to use ERP. If you have ERP just with sales order, then it will say, these are the things I think you need to purchase, right? It is a as we talked about, a process, right? You got the inventory reorder that I showed you, right, with the standard reorder report. You could build off that with this and use IRP. The IRP then, oh, sorry, I don't know what just happened. The IRP then says, okay, let's see what the sales orders are. Let's look at your min maxes. Here's the things I think you should purchase. Here are the things that it'll list them all. You can select which ones, and then you can say generate purchase orders for it, right? So you don't have to have production management to use IRP. Demand, they added more information and consolidation of the demand, right? So if you got the same item when creating a work ticket or a purchase order, right, that you're going to produce from IRP or buy from the IRP setting, right, it could take multiple lines and make them into one. So a lot of, again, just a lot of enhancements around that IRP area to keep working on improving it. Inside of the material where used inquiry, we have a quantity remaining column, right? So again, if you're big into the manufacturing and you use this where used, right, it can show you, I'm going to say, hey, where's the material used, what work tickets is it on, how much is remaining. So I can look here and say, oh, when I get the 95019, I'm now at -7. I obviously need to get some, whatever in. So again, just a lot of information that you can use. Again, so I wanted to touch base once more on this, the idea site. So a lot of what you saw back there was ideas that came from this. And of course, the other thing I mentioned, 90 Minds, which we're part of, right? Sage, I was just up in Chicago at the Partner Summit, right, talking to who runs what they call BMS. And they said, they were the same thing. It was like, hey, we really do watch that. We really do take that feedback and really do make choices based on what's out there, right? So if we look at that, what does that mean, right? So if I go back out here and I look at plan, right, here's the things that they definitely are planning to do, right? This would probably be stuff that's in a service pack of 2024. This might be in 2025, right? But add export to Excel button on paperless office viewer grids, right? So again, purchase order request for quote or an RFQ, right? I've had clients ask me about that and how do we handle it? Well, looks like Sage is planning on, has it planned and it's coming, right? And then the completed is often a good place to look at and say, what did they complete, right? That's useful, right? Scanning through, reading the subject lines, right? And what are they, right? Turning off extended item description box and negative quantity pop-up, right? Awesome, they added it, right? And they kind of say, hey, I've added it, right? Available on April 18th, 2024. That's when they added that ability. And then back to how do I find this information in Sage 100? If I go back to my Sage 100, and I go back to, if you remember, we were on help in our screenshot and resources, right? My resource center, right? I can use the knowledge base, right, to find things. I can use the community to find things, right? I can click, I didn't want to click about, that's not what I wanted. I want my help. If I go to the help topics, right, what's really nice about this is inside of here, not only can I search on different things, right, but I can click on what's new. And then you'll notice here all the information about what they added for that version, right? What I went over today is a lot of what's in here, not everything, right? I'm pretty sure you did not care about the updated tour of the desktop video, and you didn't care about the SQL Server thing, right? But if I look at, what does a consultant look at, right? This is one of those things, right? When this is released to us, when we see a new version, we run through this. What is it that they have added, right? And they actually have this for every version. If you click on this up here and you just change this to 2022, let's say, just hit enter. Now you're looking at Sage 100 2022, right? I can go to 21. I don't know how far back they go, but again, a lot of that information is up here, right? I think you can actually just go to this without the year. Oh, no, it jumped to a year. Okay. For some reason I thought I could go without a year and it would list the years that it was working with, but it doesn't want to. Again, how do I find that information? How do I learn more about it, right? Those are great resources. Obviously, talking to us, right? I mean, not only do we learn from Sage, but often we learn from our clients, right? Our clients experience things. And so we try to share those experiences, right? Oh, I saw that at a client, or, hey, this is what here's what they use to solve that problem. So some of that is just experience that we've had with our clients that we try to share amongst our client base within reason, right? There's no industry secrets or anything that we're sharing, but, right, how do I process a sales order is, everybody's processing a sales order. So, where are we at? 2:41. So we got about 9 minutes. If there are any questions, I mean, I can keep talking and talking, but I thought, I'm going to pause again for a second.
We don't have any questions right now. If anybody has any questions related to what Chris has covered, please go ahead and use chat and we'll read them aloud.
Okay. I'll touch on a few other things as we, because I always look at this as a chance to talk to a lot of clients and just things that we've experienced over the last year, right? Over the last year, we have added a third-party tool that if someone wants a API integration with Sage 100 that's JSON and XML compatible, we now have a resource. We have 2 clients using it right now. Pretty simple to set up, and it builds out a read and write for every module in Sage 100. That is a normal API that most places know how to deal with, right? So I've got one that is integrating Salesforce using it with a group, and I've got another one that's integrating a website that they have for e-commerce through the tool. And so sometimes you have, and some of our clients would know this, but we've written our own as well, right? Michael in our group especially. I mean, he's got a whole library of APIs he's stood up all over the place for a lot of our clients, so we can spin them up very fast. They're very useful if you need a custom API, right? Which does happen, and so we have that expertise and we can help you with that. But we also try to find what's the right solution, right, for your problem. Sometimes it's a custom, sometimes it's a pre-built. Example, I got someone that really wants to get into the Amazon side of things and orders flowing into Sage 100. So, we've worked with Amazon in the past, trying to write custom API with them. To say it's difficult is an understatement. And so, with that one, we're going to look at a third-party tool. InSync is one that comes to mind that we use for that solution. Because in this world today, especially, we're looking at how do we connect things to things, right? And so Michael, Chris, David, we spend a lot of time working on that every year with clients on how do I connect this, that, and the other. A big thing I would also then touch base on is if anybody processes credit cards, reach out to me if you want to, engage in. Let's make sure you have a good rate and a good system going, right? We've seen a little bit of change over the last year in that, in some of our clients, and we've been able to save them, in some cases, some significant money in that area. It just depends on who your provider is and what your rates are and all that good stuff. But I know of one client that I think we saved them about $40,000 estimated for this next year, right? So little things like that. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, what are you guys experiencing in that? Are you seeing anything, or in the credit card processing world, right? Or there's a lot of people that are getting into the different payment methods with AP, right? We get into ACH, right? Mary, Rick, Brad, they all know how to generate, set that all up with you. It's usually not a big thing. How do we become more efficient in our payment processing, be it we are sending payments or we are receiving payments, right? So a lot of seen a lot of that in the last year. And of course, we have ScanForce coming on at 3 o'clock as well. They have been huge for a lot of our large clients and clients in general, right? Just the automation that they've been bringing to people's processes, gathering the data, especially if you're doing labor tracking, different things like that. They really, over the last few years for us, have really stepped up for a lot of our clients. And so just getting that experience, asking questions, right? Setting up time with us to say, hey, here's my problem. Have you seen anything, right? Or shoot an email to me or whoever you work with. Because we really do spend a lot of time solving problems, and we really want to share what we experience, right? To say, hey, yeah, I've seen that. Here's what I'm thinking, right? Here's how it's helped them, right? And point you in that right direction. For 2025, I had a slide. Let me see, because I've got a couple more slides here. Let's hop back to it. Safe harbor statement. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll give it longer than half a second. This can all change, really, is what that's saying, which is very true. But I kind of left it up here for fiscal year 2024 and 2025, right? So one of the things we didn't really talk much about was 64-bit versus 32-bit Sage 100. In this next coming year, our goal will be to get anybody that's 32-bit that's doing an upgrade up to 64-bit. A lot of the bugs have been worked out with all of that. There's actually things that 32-bit's causing that 64-bit fixes. So that was a big thing that we saw in this last year being worked on, right? Sage Network integration, phase 1, which we talked about that, Sage Connect, right? Bank feeds, they've worked on that in 2024. If you do bank rec a lot, there's actually a way. Mary in our group did a presentation on that. How do we integrate the bank with your bank rec, right? So that was a thing to do. And then it talked about usability enhancements, delete merge warehouse, done. Full product search we haven't seen quite yet, right? It wasn't in our thing, but supposedly still this year, right? We got service packs and things that come out. Improved audit trail, totally got it. I laughed at the refresh demo data when I read that one. I was like, yeah, some of those could be refreshed. 2025, though, you're going to see Sage ID brought in. What is that? Two-factor authentication, right? So they're talking about trying to make it so that that is a requirement even with the on-premise stuff, right? Again, trying to secure things. Increased integration with the Sage Network, Sage Inventory Manager integration. So I've talked about Sage Inventory Advisor, right? That's a white label thing from a group called NetStock. It's been around for a long time. Just know that Sage bought its own inventory manager thing. So they want to bring that into the Sage 100 world. I'm sure that is a part of the Sage Network integration, right? Because the Sage Network is where it's going to pull the information in order to provide the information. The Sage HR integration, right? So Sage has a thing. They bought Cake HR a couple years ago, and they've been working on integrating with their different products. So Sage HR is supposed to be integrated with Sage 100 at some point, 2025. Now, usability alerts, native alerts. This is one of those, like they talked about it. I sat in that as they talked about it. I just want to, I'm not sure where this will go in phase 1. I think it has the right idea. It's like an alert system, like, hey, an order is marked, new order came in on hold, right? Can we send an alert saying that that's out there? You know, a customer went over a credit limit. Can we send an alert? So we weren't given a lot of information about it, but that's the general idea of it, is that the system will start sending its own alerts. Lot serial number and invoice number expansion. Important, we have clients that have the enhancements to expand those fields for lot serial and invoice numbers, right? Because they've gotten to the end of the invoice numbers, which is what, 7 characters, I think it is right now, right? So there's an enhancement out there to take it to 15. Sage 100 mobile app, I'm making no expectations, judgments. I don't know what that 100%, they've talked about it some. Again, as part of the Sage Network integration, we'll learn a little bit more about that. Don't know a lot about it yet. Intercompany transactions, we're very curious to see what that is. Just know that we already have a third-party tool that allows us to do intercompany transactions, allows us to enter, a cost in the system and then allocate part of that cost to other company codes. There's an add-on for that. And then they talk about CRM integration improvements. That hasn't been spelled out. I'm not 100% sure what that is yet, but again, this is next year. Usually we know more about what this is going to be sometime around February or March. We did questions. So again, Sage 100 team, our phone number, our email address for general support, right? If you have any questions after today, please reach out, let us know. We're here to help at all times. And I really do appreciate you taking the time with me today to look at what all has changed. So that said, we're going to return at 3 p.m. And meet with ScanForce and go over enhancements and different things like that they've got to share with us for this coming year. Thanks, everybody. All right, good afternoon, everyone that continued to hang out with us. So for the next 30 minutes or so, Mr. Brian Berry from ScanForce is joining us. As I mentioned in our last hour and a half, 2 hours together, ScanForce here has really done a lot to help our clients over the last couple of years, and I asked Brian to join us today just to go over some of the cool enhancements that are out there that clients are using, or things that really do help improve the business that just outside of the core scanning abilities that we talked a little bit about in the previous conversations. So Brian is here with us today from ScanForce to walk you through some of those changes, and then if you have questions afterwards, you can reach out to Brian or myself or really any of our consultants. We're happy to get you the information you need or answer questions you may have, etc. But Brian, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, will do. Thanks a lot, Chris. Yeah, I love following Chris on these things because it makes me sound like so much a better presenter than normal. So thank you much for the invitation. No, we have a great relationship with the folks at GWD. Many clients, and we greatly appreciate that relationship. So again, my name, Brian Berry. I'll be walking you through the presentation today. And I want everybody to get your phone out. Normally, this is the part of the presentation where they tell you to put your phone away and silence it. We're going to do the exact opposite, okay? In just a moment, I'm going to pop up a barcode. I want you to open up the camera app on your phone. And so scanning this, actually just to hold your phone up with the camera app, you don't take a picture of everything. It will provide a link on your screen. You click, it's going to link your phone to the website that links back to my presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up a series of questions like polls, and you'll be able to see those and answer those on your phone dynamically, and the answers will flow back in to my presentation. Now, we won't see your individual responses. It'll be more like, 20% of people said this, 50% of people said that, that sort of thing. So nothing that you say personally will get out there, I promise. But this is really important because this allows us to do benchmarking, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put that barcode up there on the screen. So just hold your camera app up and view the barcode through your camera app, and you click on the link. That will link you to the presentation. If at any point in time you get disconnected, the barcode will be on each individual poll question slide as well. You can relink, okay? So this concept of benchmarking is really important. It's something that every business needs to do, but we just rarely find the time to do it. But if you think about who's in the room right now, a bunch of Sage 100 people, a bunch of people that move stuff around for a living and sell stuff and have things that come into their warehouse and flow out of their warehouse. So we're all in different lines of business, but we're all doing the same mechanism. So this is a great group to benchmark yourself against. So when I ask questions, if 80% of the people say one thing and you're in the 20th percentile, then obviously that may prompt you to ask some questions of yourself. Why are we not doing what everybody else is doing or what everybody else thinks is the right way to do it? And there isn't necessarily a right way, wrong way, but at least this will hopefully spark some conversation. So I hope everybody's had a chance to open up your camera app on your phone, scan that barcode. Let's dive in and hit our first question. Now, the way I'm going to start this is a quick little history of barcodes, because a lot of people think barcodes are magic. They do all these weird, cool things. But I really want to give a quick baseline, get everybody on the same page, because some of you may have been using barcoding for a long time. Others may be completely foreign. So I just want to kind of level the playing field, get everybody on the same screen, let you know exactly what barcodes are, what they do, and sometimes maybe even more importantly, what they don't. So here comes the very first question. Okay. Pick the year when barcodes were first created. So give me just a second. That should be popped up on your phone now. Go ahead and just click on one of those. And don't worry about right answers, wrong answers. My kindergarten teacher told me a long, long time ago, Brian, there are no stupid answers, just stupid people. I'm not quite sure what she meant by that. But in just a moment, I'm going to switch the screen over and we'll see your responses as they flow through. So get your answers locked in. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. 1974 is the winner. That's what most of you think. And then there's some others, 1776 didn't get any love, not surprising. But here's the real deal. 1974 was what most of you think was the answer. And in fact, in 1974, a pack of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit Gum was scanned in Ohio. And that was the first time a barcode was scanned. So everybody should be feeling, well, at least, most of you feeling pretty good about your answer. However, way back in 1948 is when barcodes were actually first created. So most of you heard the Wrigley's story and you got the 1974, but trick question, when were they created? Way back in the 40s, and you see they were actually patented in the early 50s. In fact, this is a screenshot from that patent. This was the first barcode ever conceived or devised or put on paper. It was called the bullseye for obvious reasons, but it didn't win out. The linear barcode that we see today that looks more like a picket fence, like what you'd see on a box of cereal, that design ultimately won out in the consumer world because the printing technology of the day couldn't print this well because it would smear because of all the curved surfaces. But a linear barcode going through a printer was just one straight line of pixels, if you will, and so it was much better. All right. So the next question, how many barcode symbologies are there? Before you answer, you may want to know what the heck a symbology is. Well, symbology is just a language of barcodes. And we, as humans, we talk in English or French or Spanish or German or what have you. Barcodes have languages too. We call them symbologies. Take a wild guess. About how many symbologies do you think there are out there in the world? And in 3, 2, 1, we're going to pop up the answer, get yourself locked in, and 117. I love it. That many of you think that there's that many symbologies because you think barcodes are huge. They're everywhere, but you're wrong. The answer is 30. It's actually 30-ish. There's a couple that are fringe, but 30-ish is the right ballpark number. So those of you 13%ers, good job. That is the correct answer, 30. So these languages or symbologies all have different names. Which one of these doesn't sound like something a real barcode would be called? Okay? Which one of these is not the name of a real barcode symbology? Aztec, Interleaf 205, MSI Leslie, and Codablock. Which one sounds the fakest, I guess? Here we go. Here's the answer coming in 3, 2, 1. Trick question. Those are all barcode symbologies. So yes, Interleaf 205, Codablock, Aztec, and MSI Leslie are all actual names of symbologies. I threw that question in there just because I wanted to prove that nobody really knows this stuff except those of us geeks like me that have been doing this for 25 years. And actually, if you've ever flown the plane, look at your boarding pass. The airline industry uses Aztec barcodes. It looks like a two-dimensional, kind of like a QR code that has blocks in the middle, like squares that radiate out from the center. Those are Aztec barcodes. If you've ever flown on a plane, you've actually used one of these. Okay. Now, a question for each of you. Simple yes and no. Do you use lots and or serial numbers in your operation? Okay. Hopefully you know the answer to this. Go ahead and lock your answer in there, yes or no. And about 2/3 of you do, and about a third of you don't. That's about what I expected to hear, okay? And their polls changing a little bit, okay? So maybe more, that's even great, okay? So barcodes are so critical for any of you that are using lots or serials. If you're doing this on paper, how much time do your people spend writing down lot numbers? And it's serial numbers 10 times worse because it's a one-to-one relationship. At least with lots, you may have 100 of the same lot, right? So I had one customer, they were in the food business, everything was lot controlled, and their suppliers sent them everything with the barcode label, which is great. They have to print themselves, but there was one barcode for the item code, and there was one barcode for the lot number. And they did about 30,000 barcode scans a day across their 7 locations. And they sat in on a meeting of mine one time, and somebody called me afterwards, and they said, Brian, are you serious? We could do a 2-dimensional barcode like a QR code that could hold both the item code and the lot number and capture both pieces of data with one barcode scan? And I said, yeah, only for like 20-something years you could do that. They saved themselves 15,000 barcode scans a day just by changing the symbology or language of the barcode that we're using. So there's a great deal of art that goes with the science of the barcode. We're the barcode experts. I personally been doing this since 2000. I date myself a little bit. So would love to have a conversation with you and talk about your specific use case, your needs, and find out which type of barcode would make the most sense for you. Now, I said that 2D barcodes can hold like a lot number and a serial number. So what do you think? How many total digits do you think a 2D barcode could hold? All right, here we go. Lock your answers in. 3, 2, 1, and answers still coming in. 250 is leading the way. The answer is actually 7,000. If in doubt, go big. I can code the entire Gettysburg Address the size of a postage stamp. That's how dense the symbologies are, some of these. So if we can hold 7,000 digits, we can definitely hold your item code, your lot numbers, serial numbers, expiration dates, born on dates, you name it, we can put it in there, okay? Now, one of these symbologies that is the most prevalent is the UPC, or Universal Product Code. This is what you see when you go to the grocery store, okay, Walmart, Target. This is what's on all consumer goods. They're scanned all over the world, all day, every day. Take a wild guess about how many times a day do you think the UPC codes are scanned? Lock those in, and here we go with the results in 3, 2, 1. Bingo. If in doubt, go big. Actually, 5 billion. 5 billion. 1 billion, still a good guess. Actually, some of you are cheating. You're waiting until I tell you the answer, then you're liking your votes in. But that's okay. We'll hold it against you. We're not keeping score. Except I really am behind the scenes, but you don't know that. That's okay. No, I'm actually not. I can't see who does what. All I see is the results. But yes, 5 billion times a day, UPC's codes are scanned. Okay, so again, want to do a really quick checkup, make sure everybody understood what barcodes are. Just kind of take some of the mystery out of them. All a barcode does, really, when you scan it, is it sends keyboard strokes. That's really the whole magic behind it. When you scan a barcode, it decodes whatever that is, converts it to letters, numbers, characters, whatever, and it sends keyboard strokes and types it in that field. A barcode scanner is really just the world's fastest typist. It's really what it is. So now that you know a little bit about barcodes, let me tell you just a little bit about my organization, ScanForce. So we've been around for a long time. We are very deeply ingrained into the Sage world. We grew out of Sage 100. It was a Sage 100 client that said, hey, I want to scan barcodes. How do I do that? And something was written for them. It got spun off into its own entity called ScanForce way back when. And now we have upwards of 10,000 users across Sage. Sage actually white labels our solution, meaning that they sell it as their own product for a different ERP package other than Sage 100. So it's a sort of skinny down version of what would be available to you in the 100 world that they provide for other ERPs, but actually Sage sells it, still us behind the scenes, but just to let you know kind of how we're viewed in the larger Sage world. So what we do is WMS, that's this up here, it stands for Warehouse Management System. We have 3 different versions, Core, Select, and Premier. Excuse me. We can obviously print labels. We're a barcoding company. What good would it be if we didn't have a barcode to scan? So we can print those at receipt of goods coming out of manufacturing and various other times. Okay? All the manufacturing stuff, even old legacy work order. Don't tell Sage. we can still do it, okay? Bill of materials, production management, this make-to-order piece is really kind of cool. It's a companion to production management. If you're using PM today, how cool would it be if we just watched you enter sales orders and automatically created the work tickets for you to make all that stuff that you need? Well, that's what make-to-order does, okay? We also have a mobile sales piece, which allows you to disconnect from Sage on like a tablet and take orders from either your will call desk or a trade show or in front of your customer at their office, that sort of thing. So we can talk about that if you want, but we're mainly here to talk about barcoding. And the warehousing barcoding solution, it's all about speed and efficiencies. So we did this million record challenge years ago. We loaded up 1 million records, and it returned that to us in less than 0.03 seconds, which is really, really fast, even for computers. It's very intuitive. Like I said, we grew out of Sage 100. We know how Sage 100 wants the data to flow back in, so the screens are designed very intuitively. And support, this is one where I'll just say, ask your DoD person, whoever you talk to over there, ask them what their thoughts are about our support, and I think you'll be impressed when you hear it, okay? All right. I'm a statistics guy. I like hearing numbers and what other people think. Again, kind of back to benchmarking. What is the rest of the world doing? Okay. Well, back in 2020, this group came up with this figure: 80% of U.S. companies use barcoding in their warehouse, one degree or another. Okay. So again, are you an 80% company or are you a 20% company? If you're an 80% company, are you curious about how you can do it better and the other things you can add? We're going to talk about some enhancement things that we can do to add efficiencies. If you're a 20 percentile company and you're listening to this, it means you're interested in finding out, well, what's the other 80% of the world doing? Okay, that's my job. I can get on the phone with you and talk through your needs and how we can help. Okay. Another one, GS1, they're sort of a standard organization across the world for making sure barcodes line up. It's kind of like 802.11 for it's a Wi-Fi standard, kind of a similar thing here. Well, they say that barcodes can reduce logistical errors by up to 41%, okay? So however many errors you have ever had in your warehouse, how would you like to flip a switch and have 41% of them go away, okay? That's kind of what the magic that we're talking about here with the barcodes. And another finding fairly recently as well, about 5 years ago, implementing barcodes improved real-time accuracy of your inventory by 27%, okay? If your inventory is not accurate, what do? You tell purchasing to buy more. Fluff factor. Are things more expensive now than they were a couple of years ago? Of course they are. We have a new president because of that, actually. That's one of the big things that was talked about is price of goods. Everything's more expensive now, right? So if you could reduce your carrying cost by just a little bit, would that be worth it? Take a fraction of the money that you're spending in increased carrying costs and put it towards technology that can actually prevent that kind of inaccuracy from being a problem as we go down the road. Okay? All right, let's jump back into our poll questions here. Let me ask another question of you. Guess how many enhancements we have. I told you on one of the first screens that we have 3 different versions or editions of our warehouse management system, but we have an a la carte menu off to the side of enhancements that can be added on to help tweak a process or add some efficiency. So how many total enhancements do you think we have? 50-50. Not 44. Okay. The correct answer is actually 63. Nobody went big, even though I harped on going big was never a bad choice. Nobody went big for 97. 63 is actually the answer. Okay. Now, in saying that, the top-end version, the premier version of our software has a lot of those things built in. They're sort of baked into the software. Whereas the core product, the smaller, more entry-level product, you can bolt on one of those enhancements rather than upgrading all the way to the top. So we try to make it very financially viable for you, allowing you to sort of a la carte piece things together to build a perfect solution for you so you're not really overpaying for anything, okay? Another question. I'd like for you to rank the most popular enhancements, okay? So rank them. Production management, wave picking, bill of materials, label printing, and pallet tracking. So if you click on your screen and drag them up to the top, I believe is the way it works, and then you can drag and sort of rearrange them into workable order. So a lot of people think production management, and still people are thinking and active, okay? Still people chiming in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this up there while we talk. Actually, label printing is number one because, again, we're a barcode company. What good would be without a barcode label? 99% of our clients want to print labels. We do have some people that deal with consumer goods, so stuff comes in already labeled, good for them, but most people want to print a barcode label, okay? The next two are both manufacturing. It's actually bill of materials second, production management third, okay? But I did this over 4 years, and what I found was over a 4-year period, we had one more bill of materials client than we did production management client. But last year, we sold about 3 times as many PM deals as we did bill of materials deals, which means there's a trend in the Sage 100 market moving towards production management. So again, thinking about benchmarking, what are other people doing? Production management is by far increasing over bill of materials in terms of what people want to do. Obviously, you could track labor and some other things like that. So that's one of the reasons why. Okay. Wave picking, the ability to group orders together to pick them simultaneously. And then finally, pallet tracking was the 5th most popular of this list. These are the top 5, simply because pallet tracking hasn't been around as long, and not everybody deals with things at the pallet level. Some people deal with more the item, piece, case level, that sort of thing. So not everybody needs to do palleting. So the actual order is label printing, bill of materials production management, sort of 1A or 2A and 2B, and then waving and then palleting. Okay. Now, since we talked about some of the enhancements that are available out there, let's talk about what's hot right now. What are people coming to us and talking about the most? Okay. And some of these are very popular because they are new. This order assignment's about a year old. We released this last October. What it allows me to do is have a list of all my sales orders that need to be picked. And I can sort them by day, by customer, by route, or however you need to do that. And then I can assign them out to individuals. And I can say, Bobby gets 5, and Stevie gets 5, and Timmy gets 5. And that way everybody has their 5 orders and they can go pick them. But one of the orders is gigantic and much larger than the others. Well, maybe I only put 1 for Bobby, and then I split up and I do more like, 8 or 9 for the other guys, okay? That way I can balance my workload and everybody gets the same amount of work, even though it's different number of orders. I can also prioritize. For instance, if you have one order, maybe somebody's coming to pick that up. And so I prioritize it. So when I go to my gun, I look at my to-do list for the day, and this one's at the top of the screen. It's the most important one. It's got to be done first, okay? Or maybe I want to assign the most difficult, complex job to my best person. You can do that too. That's another way to prioritize. You can also go completely paperless doing this. Now, you can certainly print pick tickets, till the cows come home if you want to. A lot of people want to go paperless. We certainly allow for that with the scanners, handhelds, okay? Another thing that's really popular right now is Starship integration. If you use Starship, we need to talk, because what this does is the user on the handheld would scan the items for the sales order. It validates, makes sure they're correct. Excuse me. And then, pardon my cough. And then we're going to ping Starship behind the scenes, and Starship is going to automatically spit out my labels. So your users don't have to interface with Starship at all on an order-by-order basis. Now, still on account management basis, you're going to go in there and do that sort of thing. But on an order-by-order basis, box-by-box, your users do not have to log into Starship anymore. We, ScanForce, will ping them behind the scenes and say, hey, here's all the info that you need to generate my labels, and magically they just spit out. And honestly, it happens faster than I could even describe the process. It's really pretty quick, okay? So if you're using Starship, we should certainly talk, okay? Now, license plating. This one, like I told you a few minutes ago, is newer, so it's gaining in popularity. And what I tell people is, if you have equipment that looks like those things on the screen right now, we need to have a conversation. I would love to play devil's advocate with you and let you prove to me that you don't need license plating or pallet tracking. We call it license plating generically because not everybody ships on pallets. Some people ship in totes or gaylords or bags or barrels or whatever. But license plating allows me to put multiple things on one pallet or one tote or what have you. And it can be all of one item and a mix of lots and serials or expirations, or it can be a mix of a bunch of different items. And the cool thing is, we're going to print a pallet label to go on the outside of the shrink wrap, and then one scan, I can move it, and everything on the pallet moves with one scan. I can build a pallet for a customer and put it on a shelf and leave it for a day, a week, a month, a year. And then when they call to release it, one barcode scan on the pallet ID label and everything inside that pallet just shipped because we define what's in the pallet in Sage. That's another important thing. This data doesn't live in ScanForce. Your data will always still live in Sage. We're just augmenting what Sage can do with that data, okay? All right, another question. I want to talk about our support for just a second because it's a hallmark over here at ScanForce. It's something that we do really well. We take great pride in. What do you think our support team's average response time is? Now, this was calculated over all of last year, 2023. We calculated time to first contact, 30 seconds, 26 minutes, hour and 45 minutes, or 4 hours. What do you think our average response time to support was? And in 3, 2, 1, bingo, 26 minutes. Some of you may have heard me say this before. Yes, 26 minutes was our average time to first response. And by the way, that was not an email that says, we got your message, we'll get back to you tomorrow. That was an actual human responding to your request. And if 26 minutes is the average, means that half the time we beat it, okay? So that's fast. I'll put that up against anybody in the tech world. And again, don't take my word for this. Ask the folks that you deal with at GWD, and they will vouch for that, okay? Now, in terms of support, certainly implementations, we do all of that ourselves. Ongoing support, custom programming. We have our own programmers. We don't outsource that. We write all of our own code. And you'll have unlimited contacts to our help desk, be it email, phone calls, whatever. We also track and analyze the data. If we have 5 phone calls that come in from you all about the same thing, we might be able to say, hey, you know, with a little extra training, you guys could completely resolve this issue and not have these kind of delays going forward, okay? Also, product updates or Sage 100 upgrades. Whenever, 2025 comes out, PU1, PU2, whatever it is, we're a master developer in the Sage world. What that means is we get an advanced copy of these things before they come out to the real world. So we get our ducks in a row. We're ready to support it within days of it being offered to you, the public. So bottom line, we'll be ready to do this long before you're ready to update, okay? Now, the million-dollar question, how much does this cost, okay? Well, I've been asked that question a lot, and my answer is this. How much is a car? Well, it kind of depends, okay? Is it a Yugo or is it a Benz, all right? So we don't sell Yugos around here, but we do have different levels. We talked about Core, Select, Premier, the 3 different functional levels of our WMS, our warehouse management system. We talked about 63 enhancements off to the side. Some of you may have very basic needs, and you're not a manufacturer. So the Core is all you need. Maybe you want to print labels. Maybe we add label printing on there for you, but that's it. Okay, probably half of our clients, once they pick the WMS version, that's all they need. And then the other half, maybe you're a manufacturer and you want to add on bill of materials or production management, okay? Or maybe you want to wave pick, you want to pick orders simultaneously. So if I have 1 truckload scheduled to go somewhere, I can put one customer's 5 orders on there. Imagine this, if I've got 5 orders on 1 truckload, if I pick them one at a time, let's say all 5 of them have the same item on it. One fast mover. Well, that means that picker's got to go to that location 5 separate times. Wouldn't it be cool if I could combine them on the handheld and have them go to that location one time, pick everything they need, and then put it in separate boxes in a separate step? Okay. So again, it's all about building efficiencies. So these add-on enhancements obviously cost a little bit extra, but if you're a manufacturer, that's what you need. If we can save you tons of footsteps every day, these kind of things like wave picking will pay for themselves in days because of labor savings, okay? Now, in general, nothing to do with us here at ScanForce, nothing to do with Sage, but in general, barcoding systems are estimated to pay for themselves in about 6 to 18 months, okay? I've been doing this, again, for nearly 25 years. I will go to my grave, I'll die on this hill, I'll tilt against this windmill forever. Barcoding systems don't cost money, they make money. In efficiencies, saving in footsteps, saving in missed shipments, saving in ticking your customer off because you screwed up their order. Those kind of things just don't happen when you're scanning barcodes and the user gets instant feedback that says, nope, that's not the green one, that's the red one. You picked the wrong one. So they get instant feedback. We just sort of nip these kind of things in the bud, okay? So again, my name is Brian Berry. I'm your liaison to ScanForce. Talk to whoever you talk to at DWD and say, I'd like to talk to that crazy barcode guy, and they will get me on the phone with you, and you can tell me your whole life story, all the problems in your warehouse, and I will show you the aspects of ScanForce's barcoding system that can help mitigate some of those problems and alleviate those things, remove them from your operation, help you be efficient, help you be more accurate. Bottom line, help you save money and help you have happy customers. Okay? All right, that's it for me, Chris.
Okay, so I want to well, first, thanks, Brian. I think there's one add-on I just want you to maybe talk just a little bit about that you guys built this last year, the image capture.
Sure, absolutely, image capture, yes. So with image capturing, these barcode scanners, these handheld devices, are much like phones. They have a camera built in the back of them. So we've built in an application that allows you to take an image either while you're receiving something or while you're packing and shipping something for proof. Now, on the inbound side, let's say you roll the bed of the truck up and all the stuff in there, all the pallets are tilted over at a 45-degree angle, okay? Or you pull a pallet off or open up a box and everything inside is just destroyed. Looks like the Tasmanian devil went through there. Well, with this add-on, you could snap a picture of that and instantly it gets saved in Sage. We're going to create a new folder in Sage where these things will all get backed up and they're saved there. And we name the file image, the image of the file, we name it the PO number -001, like a sequential counter. So you could take 10 pictures of a busted up load and have dash 001, 002, 003, that sort of thing. But they're all saved under the PO number. Now, anybody in purchasing or shipping, whoever, can go into there, type in the PO number, and they'll see thumbnails of all those images. Okay? Now, on the outbound side, it's the exact opposite. Maybe you want to prove that it looked pristine when it left your building. So you could snap a picture of a pallet that was perfectly packed, or a case that was packed well, or the truck with a bunch of stuff loaded on it that looks nice and neat and tidy. And so if it's all, upended by the time it gets to the other end, you have proof via images that it didn't look like that when it left your dock, and now you have an issue with the carrier. So instead of coming back on you for that, they can go after the carrier for the damage. And I've had a lot of people tell me, fighting one of these types of issues is more expensive than adding this application that would protect me against every one of these issues. So the image capture, it's one of our very newest things. And I have a whole webinar that I did on this, okay? Actually, if you go out to YouTube and search for ScanForce, you can find our YouTube page, and there's dozens and dozens of individual webinars just like this one right here, but on specific issues like multi-bin, if you're interested in storing things in more than one place, or image capture, or production management, or wave picking. So there's stuff out there for all of these individual applications that are enhancements that can be added on. So thanks for bringing that up, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question out there. Can barcodes be added to Sage-generated sales orders? So I think I'll take this one. So barcodes can be added to any printed form that has an ID number we need to scan, be it the sales order number, be it the item code that's on there, right? So if I'm printing a pick list, right, we can add a barcode to the pick list so that the scanners can scan the pick list, right? And because maybe we don't have barcodes out on our racking or on boxes or on the product or whatever the reasoning is, right? So that's a thing that us at DWD can handle because it's a crystal report modification. We'll go in, we'll add the barcode, right? Typically just say, hey, where do you want it, right? Maybe print out and circle where you want us to, put that barcode in. We'll have you test it with your scanner because there's a few different barcode fonts to the point Brian made, right? And some work better than others, it seems, with some scanners. So usually we do a little quick test thing, and then, yeah, you can absolutely use barcodes on any of your paperwork that goes out. So if that didn't answer the question, let me know. I know who would do it. So, shoot me an email if I didn't answer it. But yes, we can add barcodes to about any form in Sage. So, all right, thanks, Brian. I appreciate the time today. Like Brian said, if you have any questions, reach out, let us know. We work with Brian and his team day in and day out to help clients with these types of things. So a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge on our side, and obviously with Brian's side, just an amazing amount of knowledge and experience. So we're going to bring both of our highly intelligent brains together and help you the best we can. So
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Brian, for joining us today. Thanks for everybody that stayed through. And we'll go back through these questions. Afterwards, there is a email that will go out that is a questionnaire about today and other things like this that we will do in the future, and just any feedback you can provide, any ideas of what you would like us to cover in future webinars, any of that stuff we really do read and really do take into account. So please provide that feedback as you get those, and everyone go have a great week.